dying that we're born to eternal life. Oh, Spirit, breath that I may never see, so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there's despair in life, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, only light. And where there's sadness, ever joy.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to South Church, Portsmouth, the Unitarian Universalist Church. We are so glad that you have joined us this morning. And whether it be your first time, your 100th time, your 1,000th time, we're always happy to have you join us for virtual services. We are still looking forward to a time when we can be back together. But in the meantime, we gather together to celebrate Unitarian Universalism and the many voices that make up this wonderful community. And this morning, I am joined by worship associates, and what a pleasure it is to have a team of people that help to make worship so meaningful and spiritually fulfilling. This morning, our worship associate is Jonathan Cummings. Jonathan, good morning.
Good morning, Susan, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining South Church for the service. As Susan said, my name is Jonathan Cummings, and I'm one of the team of worship associates that assist with creating services for South Church. And I'm joined this morning first by Joanne Connolly, who's going to tell us a bit about the music for the service.
Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to be here with you today. And this morning, we're graced with the presence of South Church Folk, and Susan Adams and myself. South Church Folk will be singing a song from Brother Sun, an old favorite group of South Church, and they got the permission of Greg Greenway to sing one of those songs. So we're really happy to have all this music this morning. Thanks. Back to you, Jonathan.
Thanks. Yeah, and our sermon today is offered by Rebecca Dawson Webb. Rebecca lives in Kittery with her husband Tim, daughter Emma, and two cats, Tess and Tiny. And she and her family have been members of South Church for 6 years. And in fact, we were in the same starting South Church group together. And Rebecca is currently serving as convener of our learning associates. She also values her work as a facilitator and writing coach and helping people tell their stories and speak their truth. So I'm sure we'll have a great sermon today. And thank you for sharing your Sunday morning with us. We invite you all, first-time viewer or longtime member, to join us for our virtual social hour immediately after the service. You can ask any questions you have, reflect on the service, or just chat with a new or old friend. So welcome.
On Tuesday, January 26th, from 7 to 8:30 p.m., the Social Justice Associates, along with Raise Up New Hampshire, invite you to a webinar roundtable discussion about living wages in New Hampshire. The webinar will highlight the human impact on workers for whom there is not a commitment to a living wage and discuss ways to make New Hampshire a model for national change. Registrants will receive a packet including facts and links to further reading, and registration is required, and the link can be found in your Sunday morning email. It's not too late to sign up for South Church Love Letters, a project for South Church members to send Valentines to other South Church members. Grab your craft supplies, collect your stamps, and get excited to spread some love. We still need more volunteers to ensure that we can mail as many cards as possible. Purchase your own cards and stamps, and we will provide you with the information needed to send at least 5 South Church Valentines. If you're interested, please reach out to the Fellowship Associates at fellowship@southchurch-uu.org. Tonight at midnight, nominations for the 2021-2022 Shared Plate organizations will close. Make sure you get your nominations in today. The link to nominate can be found on the South Church website and in your Sunday morning email. Once we compile all the organizations that were nominated, we will present those organizations to the congregation and vote during the month of February. And finally, one of the activities that Reverend Susan offered in Leominster for over 15 years was Soup with Susan. But since we can't be together in person, Reverend Susan is going to offer Sitting with Susan. On Thursday, January 28th at 5:30 p.m., Reverend Susan will be sitting in the sanctuary at South Church, and you're invited to Zoom in to sit with her, hear a reading, and then have a conversation around that reading. Susan will tentatively be offering these sittings on January 28th and again on February 25th, but would like to hear from you with suggestions and if you'd like to join. Please email her at reverendsusan@southchurch-uu.org for more information.
Hello, my name is Donna Borg. I'm currently serving as Secretary of the Board of Trustees. This month, the board has the honor of spotlighting various groups and individuals who have been volunteering excessively these past many months, with no expectation of being recognized. We'd like to shine some light on that. I'd like to thank first our wonderful South Church folk group. These people adapted their lively in-person performances to equally lively online performances as our worship services met over the internet. As you enjoy some of the photos of the work they've done, I will read their names. Myra Aronson, Arthur Eves, June Bernard, Kathy Okeisen, Jane Kavanaugh, Karen Rubin, Mary Bannock, Rebecca Blake, Pat Felber, Jennifer Witten, Maureen O'Leary, Mitch Peebor, Di Irwin, Paula Bovin, Alice O'Trainer, Julia O'Connell, Sue Ellen Van Allen, Barbara Ullin, Dave Drucker, Carol Peebor, Deanna Strand, Meg Hunter, Russ Levrow, Michael Delterio, Tina Charpentier, Susan York. If you did not see your photo among these photos, I sincerely apologize. Please know that we appreciate every single one of you making South Church a gift this past year. I am told that there is one person's technical talents who made the choir's presentations possible and who helped support our overall music program this past year. Tim DeLea has donated countless hours in producing the music we've all been enjoying. Thank you, Tim, from all of us. Finally, there is someone without whom during this time of pandemic and quarantining, we could not have so smoothly converted our virtual worship services to online ones. Pip Clues has spent nearly every Friday or Saturday at her computer putting together services since last March up until past December, pulling together all the pieces that make up our cohesive Sunday services. She volunteered her time and talents right from the very beginning of our shutdown and has kept the heart of our community beating. We so appreciate what Pip has done to hold all of us together. Thank you, Pip. We owe you a debt of gratitude.
I open my eyes and I see you. you. I open my eyes and you're standing there. I open my arms and I greet you. We've come together, our voices to share. I open my eyes and I see you. I open my eyes and you're standing there. I open my arms and I greet you. We've come together, our voices to share.
What a week and what a month and what a year it has been. I find myself struggling immensely to put together any words for this week. I don't know about you, but I've been overwhelmed by the writing and presentation of The Hill We Climb by Amanda Gorman, our nation's first youth poet laureate. If you've not watched her deliver her inaugural poem, please do so. If you have already, please do so again. I find that it perfectly encapsulated our moment in the American experience. Our experience forging and reforging, transitioning past historical means to be more caring and resourceful, to form and reform, cycle and recycle, build and rebuild, and rise up anew. After listening to Amanda's words, I have to admit that my attempts at sharing words of value and meaning now feel quite ineffectual. But perhaps that's a good lead-in to what I was planning to, and I guess now am going to talk about. How I use and value imagination, and in some ways go beyond imagination into imaging and being to explore myself and others, and to grant myself empathy and find empathy for others. I fell in love with a board game called Hero Quest in my youth. It was basically Dungeons & Dragons light, using board game setup and simpler rules to help transport youth to a world of treasure guarded by orcs and obtained by magic. I progressed to Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder through time, placing my persona into forest rangers and flaming spear-wielding clerics. It wasn't until my senior year of high school, though, when I took a semester off from sports to act in our school musical, that I discovered and linked Dungeons & Dragons and acting together in my mind as the art of role-playing, the art of being as much someone else as you can be. To me, this is the power of imagination and the power to self-reflection and self-forgiveness and empathy. So returning to the words of Amanda Gorman, as I think through this, I come away with two lessons. The first is that the most skilled orators somehow have the skill to take us with them into their persona and to do the hard work of imagination for us. We can't always be with them, though, and we have our own paths to tread. For this morning, thank you for letting your So for this morning, thank you for letting your South Church community be the bearers of your persona. And when you two are left to your own devices, may you find your imagination hook, your tool, or your means, whatever that may be, to place your persona into the life of another. As we light our chalices today, I offer you an excerpt from the poem Noetics by Emily Kendall Frey. A noetic structure is a person's network of beliefs, thoughts, and desires. You may think you are not thinking, but you are. A thought moves from dirt up through me, and if I do not disabuse it, it grows. To suffer, to bear from below. Coming down the mountain, I could see a reservoir through the trees, fat and glowing. You are alone in your one life, and no one will enter your dreams. And from the close of Amanda Gorman's The Hill We Climb. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light if we are only brave enough to see it, if we are only brave enough to be it. Please join me in our mission statement. At South Church, we nurture spiritual growth through worship, learning, and community. We celebrate the worth and dignity of all people and inspire one another to act on our faith in the larger community.
Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
Good morning. I have another imagination story for you today, and this one is about two sisters. So one warm and summery evening, two sisters decided that they were going to sleep out underneath the stars. There was a beautiful meadow behind their house where they played most days in the grass that was as high as their waists. They had never slept out there before, but tonight was the night. So they got their sleeping bags and they made their way out in the dark. And the moon was half full, or maybe it was half empty. It depended on who you asked. But either way, there was just enough light that they could make their way out there, and they put their sleeping bags down in the soft, sweet grass. And they were about 10 feet apart, so close together, but not too close. And they laid on their backs, looking up at the stars. After a little while, fireflies started flying around in the air above their heads. And then a while after that, some little field mice who had been really quiet and still as the girls made their way into the field. Now the field mice started to move again, and they scurried about collecting seeds and working on their nests. And the girls laid so still that eventually the mice started to just run over their legs instead of going around them. Now, of course, the girls couldn't see in the dark. All they could see were little shadows here and there. But they laid there, and eventually they both fell asleep. Then, at the very first light of dawn, before the sun would even make its way up over the horizon, a white-tailed deer who had bedded down nearby for the night suddenly got up and bounded away. And the sound of that heavy animal on the soft ground woke the two girls. And one sister hurried up and she grabbed her sleeping bag and she ran inside to where Dad was already making breakfast. "Good morning, my love," he said. "How was your night?" "It was terrifying," she said. "First, I was laying there on my back looking at the stars, and then all these big insects started flying around my head, and I was sure that they were going to sting me with their venomous stingers. And then, after that, rats came from everywhere, and they were running over my legs and going all around me. It was so scary. Eventually, I fell asleep, but then I woke up just as a giant wolf ran past my head. Oh my, said Dad, that does sound terrifying. Why don't you go upstairs and get cleaned up and come down for a nice breakfast? And she went upstairs, just as the other sister came inside. Good morning, my love, said Dad. How was your night? Oh, it was magical, said the other sister. I was laying on my back, looking at the stars, and then one by one, stars started blinking and coming down, doing a beautiful little blinking light show in the air above my head. And then I could feel the fairies coming out, and they did dances on my legs as I lay there in the dark. It was pretty magical. Eventually, I fell asleep, and then I woke up just as a unicorn got up and bounded away into the forest. Wow, said Dad, that does sound magical. Why don't you go upstairs and get cleaned up and come down for a nice breakfast? Sometimes our imaginations can have a big impact on how we experience things. The way something happens to one person can feel very different to somebody else. I miss you and I love you, and I look forward to imagining with you again soon.
Today's shared plate offering, as indicated on your screen, can be given using the South Church website. Our offering this month is being shared with Planned Parenthood of Northern New England. Planned Parenthood of Northern New England is the largest reproductive healthcare and sexuality education provider and advocate in Northern New England. They remain open and are offering telehealth appointments to continue providing their services. Please give as you are able to help support their mission and share our good fortune with the larger community.
I learned as a child there are two ways to see the world as it is and the way it should be.
People say that's just not my problem. Some people do what must be done.
They see the hole in the fabric that must be sewn. They see the way blockaded and they roll back the stone.
They see the way beyond the horizon and they do what must be done.
Some people do what must be done. They do what must be done.
They see the way beyond the horizon and they do what must be done.
I've seen the toll taken, the tears that were shed. I've seen the journey started and the ripples ahead.
Some people say that's just not my problem. Some people do what must be done.
They see the hole in the fabric that must be sewn. They see the way blockaded and they roll back the stone.
They see the day beyond the horizon and they do what must be done.
Some people do what must be done. They do what must be done.
They see the way beyond the horizon and they do what must be done.
They see the day beyond the horizon and they do what must be done.
As we take a few moments of prayer, let's take a moment to focus on all that is surrounding us, all that is around us. And let us remember all the people who need to know that they are held in love and care. To that which gives you source of all of strength and courage and hope and inner resources. We have needed every bit of both external and internal strength in these last weeks. And as we begin to notice the changes of the winter time, the little lighter in the morning and a little lighter later in the evening, my heart is filled with gratitude for the reminder that life is a cycle, an ever-ending cycle, that things turn and change and shift, and that if I can tap into the cycles of nature that swirl around me, I can appreciate the beauty of life and my life more fully. Outside today were a few little snow flurries. Lovely, lovely to look at, lovely to see, lovely to know that they too are part of all of nature and of our being. And as I woke this morning and the sun was just peeking through, which hadn't been happening last week, I was also filled with gratitude, reminding me that life shifts, life changes, and that I need to be a part of those shifts and those changes. And for that, I am grateful. And for those 400,000 plus people who have died of COVID, when we rang our bells this week at the church, we send our prayers to family members and to all who suffer, to all those who are suffering from economic deprivation and scarcity and concern. We know we've been there, many of us have been there more than once, and this church is there for you. If you have those concerns, please don't go it alone. Please reach out, be in touch with us. For all those who are taking care of children and managing work and life during this very chaotic time, know that you're not alone and that we think of you and we're here and we want to hear what you have needs of. And so as I do every week, I'd invite you to take a few moments and in the chat box, write any of your concerns, be there, prayers that you might need to have answered, or their concerns that you have for your loved ones or concerns you have for one another. And know that we see them, we read them, and we reach out when you wish us to. Unto this precious morning, we have come with gratitude, with hope, and knowing that we need the courage, wisdom, and love of one another. And I say, may it be so.
Good morning. This sermon was hard to start, even though I had months to think about it. It helps to admit that to you. It helped to admit that to myself when I finally sat down to write. What to say, I wondered, given the experiences we've all been through with the pandemic, with our poisonous politics and painful racism that was highlighted by the terrible attack on our Capitol on January 6th. It has been, to say the least, an upsetting and unsettling year, dizzying and disorienting in its eventfulness, a kind of protracted grief punctuated by shock. Doesn't this time last year feel like forever ago? Trying to get perspective on these past many months, I have needed to do what writer Natalie Goldberg calls composting, a process she describes as allowing our experiences to sift through our consciousness. For me, this composting has happened most effectively when I have found space. As winter has exacerbated the already narrowed pandemic world, I am ever more grateful for lying in bed in the first thing in the morning, looking at the sky through the tangle of tree branches, watching the shape and drift of the clouds, sometimes lit sunrise pink. It is obvious, but still worth noting, and particularly now appreciating how spacious the sky is. A welcome and necessary expansiveness when we are so often looking down at our phones, laptops, and iPads, watching Netflix, scrolling social media, focused on the news. In a piece in the New Yorker about his experience during the pandemic, art critic Peter Skeldale writes, "I've been feeling apologetic to certain trees near my home for my past indifference to their beauty, and a lesson in joy that we used to take for granted. We will have peeled eyes." I love that line. I've been feeling apologetic to certain trees near my home for my past indifference to their beauty. You, like me, may have found going for walks during this pandemic has taken on new meaning. For me, it's not only been an opportunity to savor trees and appreciate the sky, it's also been a chance to escape the 24/7 news cycle and broaden my vista that gets too closed in by too much time inside the same space, often focused on work and feeling buried under by emails. My head gets filled with noise, which makes me irritable, but outside I am nourished and refreshed by nature, and these walks allow me to revise the way I see the world. They give me the space to reconsider whatever hassled, stressed, and stuck mental state I may have gotten into. These walks, like writing this sermon, remind me of the importance of revision. As a writing teacher, I am all too familiar with how many of my students resist the idea of revision. For them, it means they didn't get it right the first time. It means more work when they hoped they were done. Elizabeth Jarrett Andrew observes in her book, Living Revision, A Writer's Craft is Spiritual Practice. We humans dislike being undone. The state of incompletion is uncomfortable, as is vulnerability and unknowing. We have an unrelenting urge to wrap things up. But I love the word revision with its meaning to re-see. I love what it invites us to do, to reconsider, to see with fresh, or as Skeldale puts it, peeled eyes. Revision is the work of writing. It is also the work of being alive. Indeed, everything from a piece of writing to the way we see ourselves and each other, the stories we tell, the opinions we hold, the understandings we have, needs to be revised. When we lead curious, open-hearted lives, Andrew points out, revision is a natural consequence of growth. But as I was reminded in the writing of this sermon, revision not only takes, but needs time. The time to gain perspective that allows us to question our initial aversion of things. In school, we are taught to efficiently write a tidy, tight essay. But I prefer writer Grace Paley's invitation to write about what we don't know about what we know, and this takes time. Paley reminds me to look at the world and others with curiosity, to wonder what I don't know rather than simply assert what I do. To revise is to consider other possibilities and to take into account how others see and experience the world. The beautiful question that is at the heart of memoir writing is, what's it been like for you to be in the world? This question acknowledges that each of us experience the world differently, and it opens space to learn more. Yes, we've all been through the pandemic together, but as we know, our experiences of it have been vastly different. I am grateful that much of my work gives me the opportunity to hear people's stories. These stories help to counteract my judgment. They make me rethink what I thought I knew. They remind me that there is more than one perspective, mine. Stories make room for other stories. In the book Storycatcher, Christina Baldwin tells about a group of people on opposite sides of the abortion debate who come together as part of the Public Conversation Project. The 20 participants engage in an ongoing 3-year conversation during which they agree to share stories, not opinions, and to listen rather than try to persuade. It is, of course, an exercise in tolerance, and what emerges is not changed minds about the issue, but changed understandings about each other. Listening is the act of creating space where change can happen. And as this project illustrates, listening is not the same as agreeing, even though we often behave as though it is. Too often, instead of listening, we prefer to spout our opinions, marshal our arguments, and wield our facts as we dig into a position. We think in terms of sides, and in the echo chambers of Fox News and MSNBC, our worldviews are confirmed. But as Andrew comments in Living Revision, change on the page, as in life, does not happen when we're stubborn and clingy. Revision asks that we cast the small world we've created in words and all it represents within our being in an entirely new light, writes Andrew. To revise is to soften, to loosen our grip. It's about making room for what hasn't been said. Being listened to helps us do this work. When we are listened to in open-hearted ways, without argument or facile advice giving or hijacking through too ready identification, we are more likely to give voice to harder stories that might otherwise fester or calcify. The French philosopher Gaston Bachelard observed, "What is the source of our first suffering? It lies in the fact that we hesitated to speak. It was born in the moment when we accumulated silent things within us. There is, as Vivek Murthy, Surgeon General for Obama and now Biden, has highlighted, an epidemic of loneliness in this country. While the pandemic has increased our sense of isolation, loneliness is not, of course, necessarily about being alone. It is about feeling alone. We can, after all, be terribly alone with others. Loneliness is about not being seen or heard or understood, about not being found acceptable. It's about what we believe we cannot say. It is, in a sense, about being isolated in a narrative that is not allowed to change. While they can be difficult to share, our stories, and in particular our hard ones, need to be aired in order to change. In his memoir, Firebird, about growing up gay, the poet Mark Doty writes, "We live in the stories we tell. The stories we don't tell live us. What you don't know, what you don't allow yourself to know, controls and determines. Whatever's held to the light can be changed. Not the facts, of course, but how we understand them, how we live with them. Everyone will be filled by grief, distorted by sorrow. That's the nature of being a daughter or a son, as our parents are also. What matters is what we learn to make of what happens to us. And we learn to make, I think, by telling. Held to the light of common scrutiny, nothing's ever quite as unique as our shame and sorrow could have us think. But if you don't say it, you're alone with it, and the singularity of your story seems immense, intractable," writes Doty. Shame silences us. Hurt locks us in. Guilt festers and anger erodes. It has been said that hurt people hurt people. We need to loosen the hold these things can have on us and the way they can poison our relationships. We need to help each other shift the stories we are telling that do not serve us. To varying degrees, we all carry stories that do not serve us, stories we repeat, grievances we nurse. I often think of what a therapist who was in one of my memoir workshops once shared with me about her work. She said that in essence, she was helping her patients no longer have dead-end stories. In other words, she was helping them to revise. Revision is the work of healing. It is the work of restorative justice when an incarcerated person tells their story and acknowledges the harm they have inflicted not only on their victims, but also the victim's family, as well as their own loved ones. It is the work of repair, harder and more productive than fixed judgment, which is intent on defining someone by the worst they have done. But revision requires the courage to be vulnerable, as Brene Brown has taught us, and the willingness to take into account more than our story. In her new Netflix special, Brown, now famous for her research and TED Talks on shame, vulnerability, and courage, recounts a swim she and her husband Steve took on vacation, during which she told her husband how connected she was feeling to him in that moment. His response, "Water's great." Brown tells the audience how much this response felt like rejection, despite the strength of her marriage. At the end of the swim, when she questioned her husband about what was up, she discovered that while she was feeling connected, he was trying to stave off a panic attack. And as they talked, what helped them reconnect was the phrase, "The story I'm telling myself is." The story I'm telling myself is. We fill this story in so quickly when things go wrong that it's hard to know that we're even doing it. It takes effort to bring this into our awareness, to understand how shaped that story often is by our own hurts, insecurities, and fears. We have to pause and admit to ourselves that we are telling a story and not necessarily describing reality. And instead of doubling down on our version of events that only serves to isolate us more, we have to find the courage to say to the other person, "Here is the story I'm telling myself," and invite them to share their own. As poet Mark Doty puts it so well, what is healing but a shift in perspective? All of this reminds me of the beautiful Hebrew phrase, tikkun olam, repair of the world. When we listen, when we create space, we let our stories breathe. And when we allow them to be revised, acknowledging that there is more than just our version of events, we are allowing ourselves to see the world, each other, and ourselves in new ways. We are engaging in the vital work of repair. And isn't that what we need more than ever right now? May it be so.
Glory, glory, hallelujah, since I laid my burden down. Glory, glory, hallelujah, since I laid my burden down. Feel like shouting, hallelujah, since I laid my burden down. Feel like shouting, hallelujah, since I laid my burden down. Love is shining all around me since I laid my burden down. Love is shining all around me since I laid my burden down.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
I invite you now to imagine reaching out to take hold of the hand of someone you love in our congregation. Here is a poem from one of our World War I poets, Siegfried Sassoon. He wrote this in April of 1919, not long after the war had ended, and it's called Everyone Sang. Everyone sang. Everyone suddenly burst out singing, and I was filled with such delight, as prison birds must find in freedom, winging wildly across the white. Orchard and dark green fields, on and out of sight. Everyone's voice was suddenly lifted, and beauty came like the setting sun. My heart was shaken with tears, and horror drifted away. Oh, but everyone was a bird. The song was wordless, and the singing will never be done. Be well and go in peace.
Begin, begin, begin the year with grateful hearts. The year ends well that grateful starts.
Begin, begin, begin the day with grateful hearts. The day ends well that grateful starts.
Begin, begin, begin the day with loving hearts. The day ends well that loving starts.
Begin, begin, begin the year with honest hearts. The year ends well with honest starts.
Begin, begin, begin the day with singing hearts. The day ends well that singing starts.
Begin, begin, begin the day with generous hearts. The day ends well that generous starts.
Begin, begin, begin the day with happy hearts. The day ends well that happy starts.
Begin, begin, begin the day with playful hearts. The day ends well that playful starts.
Begin, begin, begin the day with gentle hearts. The day ends well that gentle starts.
Begin, begin, begin to dream what we can do with grateful and with loving hearts.